Tonight, Ottawa pushes back, saying Canada will not accept a bad trade deal from the U.S.
The doors aren't closed, the doors are open, the conversations are ongoing.
Donald Trump boosts tariffs and uncertainty for some Canadian businesses.
The uncertainties actually kills the business.
And cracks emerge in the American economy as tariffs hit, but Trump says the data isn't just wrong, it's rigged.
We're doing so well. I believe the numbers were phony.
Then fired the official in charge. Tourism within Canada is up.
Don't even watch American TV anymore, let alone visit.
The summer staycation boom.
The great Summer Macintosh.
Summer Macintosh is inspiring a new generation of swimmers, but there's a problem. Fewer places to train.
We just have a facility crisis that isn't sustainable.
How Canada's aging pools are leaving some high and dry.
From CBC News, this is The National with Asha Tomlinson.
Thanks for joining us. Adrian is away. New higher tariffs are in effect after Canada and the U.S. did not reach a trade deal by Donald Trump's deadline. Ottawa saying tonight there was no good deal even on the table. Prime Minister Mark Carney's message is clear. Canada is disappointed, but Ottawa's negotiators stress they will only accept a deal in the best interests of Canadians, and trade talks will resume in the coming weeks. But as Rafi Boudjikanian shows us, at least one province is pushing Canada to fight back.
After days of intense negotiations, Ottawa's point person on trade left DC with no deal, insisting that's better than a bad one.
We're not going to accept any deal because of an arbitrary timeline that the Americans set. We're going to do the work that's necessary to get the best deal for the country.
For now, though, Canada is facing a 35% tariff on Canadian imports not covered by the existing CUSMA deal, in addition to higher tariffs for sectors like auto, steel, aluminum, and copper. In a statement, Prime Minister Mark Carney said the Canadian government is disappointed but remains committed to CUSMA, adding, "We will continue to negotiate with the United States on our trading relationship." Negotiate but also hit back, says Ontario, calling for dollar-for-dollar counter tariffs on steel and aluminum.
It's extremely important that we be seen to be standing up for ourselves. The impacts of $1 billion of American alcohol being taken off the shelves of the LCBO.
But not all provinces agree. Saskatchewan says it's time to start fresh with the U.S. by removing or reducing counter tariffs.
Somebody's going to have to move in this space, and we would suggest that it should be Canada.
Well, let's take a deep breath here and stay calm.
Quebec's former premier and now a trade advisor to Carney says the government should wait for the right deal, says about 95% of Canadian imports to the U.S. are actually exempt under CUSMA. Charest says many American businesses are against the trade war.
So we need to encourage them to speak up in defense of their own interest, which is becoming clearer and clearer as we push ahead.
And counter tariffs are not without risk. Canada was one of the only two countries to hit back in the initial phase of Trump's trade war and may now be bearing the brunt of his anger, says this observer.
So right now, Donald Trump is in a position where he can pick on Canada, make an example of us, and send a message to every other country.
For now, though, Canadian negotiators say they have not decided whether they will impose counter tariffs in the short term.
And Rafi, is anyone providing any hints at all of why there was no deal?
LeBlanc seemed to suggest that there was no viable deal on the table. When he spoke to journalists yesterday, Donald Trump complained about dairy protections, but Canadian officials say the Americans have accepted there will be no concessions on supply management. LeBlanc expects to speak to his U.S. counterpart again next week before returning to D.C. later this month. It's not clear, though, whether Carney has spoken to Trump since the higher tariffs kicked in.
Rafi Boudjikanian in Ottawa, thank you. Many Canadian companies say the lack of a trade deal is bad for business, and higher tariffs for some exports are hurting their bottom line. But as Anis Haidari shows us, damage control comes at a cost.
Higher tariffs on goods may only apply to a single-digit percentage of Canadian exports, with broad exemptions still in place under the Canada-U.S. Free Trade Agreement. But they mean more work for this customs broker and his clients.
It is complicated now. I can tell you what used to be a half-an-hour transaction for us to prepare an entry of a shipment to go to the United States, sometimes now can take us 5 or 6 hours to do the same product.
Up to 95% of Canadian goods could escape the new higher tariff. But CUSMA requires that products aren't just from Canada, they must be made from North American goods. And accounting for the origin of every part in every product can be expensive for businesses.
How much each piece cost me in metal? How much each piece cost me in plastics?
This manufacturer spends far more time tracking than she used to.
This is mounted it in, right? So you have to take them out to weigh them, to measure them, then to come up with a pricing for each one. Then you also have to count, because this is one product. When we ship hundreds, thousands.
So only companies that can afford that paperwork or who avoid often cheaper overseas imports can dodge the 35% tariffs. There's also pain from other duties still in place. Sectors like automotive, steel, aluminum, and now copper facing heavy tariffs without many exemptions. But tariff-free businesses say these constant changes still cost them.
The uncertainties actually kills the business. Because if there's a tariff for 25% forever, we'll plan accordingly, right? So now it's just on and off.
So whether it's steel, copper, aluminum, or Canadian companies that can't change where and how they make products, there is no broad relief, especially with no broad trade deal yet. Anis Haidari, CBC News, Calgary.
The American economy is beginning to show some cracks amid the trade war. A new jobs report is much weaker than expected, which has Donald Trump fuming. And Peter Armstrong tells us he then fired the leader of the agency in charge of the data.
From the opening bell, investors ran for cover, worried that Donald Trump's tariff plan may be causing more damage than they thought. But the tariffs weren't the only thing driving uncertainty.
This was a stunner of a report.
Job creation last month slowed by much more than expected. Experts say that's not even the worst part.
What really grabs you by the throat here is that we had downward revisions for payrolls, making for a total loss of 258,000 jobs in May and June.
All told, the U.S. economy added just 19,000 jobs in May and 14,000 jobs in June, way below the monthly average. That doesn't exactly square with the message from the White House that the economy was booming in spite of tariffs.
What we are watching is President Trump rebuilding the greatest economy in the history of the world and simultaneously proving the so-called economic experts wrong at every turn.
Trump dismissed the jobs numbers as rigged in order to make him look bad, and he fired the person responsible for the jobs report.
I believe the numbers were phony, just like they were before the election. And there were other times. So you know what I did? I fired her. Right. And you know what? I did the right thing.
But it's not just jobs. Trump's tariffs weighed heavily on corporate earnings released by some of the biggest companies in the country this week. GM's profits fell by $1.1 billion in the first 3 months of the year. Ford reported an $800 million tariff hit and posted its first quarterly loss since 2023. And Apple says tariffs cost it nearly $2 billion through the first half of the year. Still, the White House is holding firm.
Look, you know, this jobs report isn't ideal.
This trade advisor admits U.S. immigration policy upended the jobs market, and the tariffs did cause some uncertainty. But
that uncertainty is resolved. The tariff rates are set. The one big beautiful bill is law. It's going to get better from here.
In the end, markets closed down, posting their worst week in months, telling us that investors just don't believe that optimism.
And Peter, American companies have been saying for a while now they aren't feeling the economic optimism.
Yeah, we've heard plenty of businesses struggling with tariffs, worried about the potential of a downturn, but that was easy to dismiss when the data were strong. Now we're seeing some of those data catch up to the anecdotes. And remember, those numbers come at a bit of a lag, right? The jobs numbers look at last month, the GDP numbers for June only just came out. And now we have economists denouncing this firing of the Commissioner of Labor Statistics as dangerous because it's going to undermine the trust in those numbers as they do come out.
Thanks, Peter. And you'll be back later in the program for more on U.S. tariffs, so talk to you again soon.
Thanks.
Peter will be joined by Rob Russo in Ottawa to look more at Canada's approach to the trade war Is the strategy working, or is it time to change course? That's in 20 minutes' time. Trips to the U.S. have been on the decline since the trade war began. Heading into the long weekend, there were still some lineups at the border. Overall, though, land crossings have been on the decline since February. Instead, many Canadians are choosing to spend their summer vacations here at home, with tourism numbers on the rise. Caroline Bargut now with how the industry is benefiting from staycations.
Instead of heading south this summer, Jennifer Cox and her kids traveled from their home in Langley, British Columbia,
Here, let's go look. There's geese.
to Victoria, Lake Louise, and now Winnipeg.
We might have chosen to travel somewhere else, but this year we decided to stay Canada, and I think we will for the near future.
They say President Donald Trump is the reason they're avoiding travel to the U.S. Same goes for Maureen Powers, who's on her way to Muskoka from Vancouver.
I'm happy to be here and don't even watch American TV anymore, let alone visit.
CAA has seen a 13% bump in people buying insurance to travel within Canada this year. Occupancy rates at Canadian hotels are up too. The CoStar Group, which tracks hotel bookings, says in June, 76% of rooms were full. In Toronto, that number is 83%. And Vancouver hotels are 87% booked.
So you're selling over 3 out of 4 rooms across the nation.
The Tourism Industry Association of Canada says so far all indicators point to a strong summer season.
I'm certainly seeing that. Statistics Canada, other information is certainly indicating all early indicators that there is an increase in Canadian and domestic tourism.
The federal government has been trying to incentivize travelers to visit Canada too. It introduced the Canada Strong Pass, which provides free admission to national parks and historic sites, and discounts at participating provincial museums and galleries, as well as discounts traveling on Via Rail, which has received more than 33,000 bookings using the pass since June 16th.
We went to Niagara Falls.
Arvind Ravindranath in Toronto used the pass to show his parents around. They're visiting from India.
So it's a good way for me to show them the sights. So yeah, it's definitely a good initiative.
Those working in the industry say while it's wonderful Canadian travelers are exploring their own country this year, they also want Americans and international visitors to know they'll always be welcome here too. Caroline Bargut, CBC News, Winnipeg.
Unionized workers at Canada Post have rejected the latest contract offer. The vote comes after more than a year and a half of negotiations. The offer had included a wage hike of about 13% over 4 years and added part-time workers, which Canada Post said was essential. The union says it will now invite Canada Post back to the bargaining table. Canada Post says it's disappointed with the results and is evaluating its next steps. Dramatic images out of the U.S. tonight after torrential rain triggered flooding in several states. Storms like this are becoming more frequent. And as Katie Nicholson shows us, some Canadian cities are playing catch-up, bracing for what's next.
New York, the city that never sleeps, brought to a standstill by a storm. Deep underground, floodwater cascaded down subway cars and spurted from the walls.
This is the new weather patterns that we have to face.
Thursday's flash floods submerged vehicles, bloated rivers and creeks along multiple states. This family saved from the Potomac, but a 13-year-old boy in Maryland swept away to his death in a sewer. Canada hardly immune. Last month, this was Montreal. An 82-year-old man had to be rescued from his car, bobbing in the water.
These urban flash flooding is a sign of the times. We're getting rain. It's going to rain in a heavier dose, maybe a shorter period of time, but you're going to get more rain at once.
And when it falls in cities, there's often less green space and soil to absorb it. Instead, it pools in concrete and asphalt and overloads drainage systems.
Every extreme weather event is really a pop quiz for our cities now. The question is, have we studied enough to pass?
Climate-proofing cities is costly but necessary, says this consultant.
It's like actions like cooling centers and resilient power grids, flood-ready neighborhoods. These things save lives and they pay for themselves many times over.
It was a little more than a year ago flash flooding turned Toronto streets into rivers and carpeted Union Station with puddles, costing millions in damages.
I've seen flood debris in the trees around here as high as our heads, maybe even higher.
The Canadian Climate Institute's Ryan Ness has seen how overloaded Toronto's stormwater systems can get. The city does have a multi-year plan to manage urban floods, but
at the current rate, we will not be catching up fast enough to prevent another occurrence like last summer.
As these cities dry out, other cities brace. The next costly storm system could hit them. Katie Nicholson, CBC News, Toronto.
Ghislaine Maxwell has been moved from a Florida prison to a new minimum security facility in Texas. The former associate of sex offender Jeffrey Epstein is serving a 20-year sentence for sex trafficking. The move comes after she had meetings with the Deputy U.S. Attorney General, who is Trump's former personal lawyer. Trump has been criticized by his own supporters for not releasing all files related to Epstein. The reason for the transfer is unclear. In the Middle East, U.S. envoy Steve Witkoff made a rare visit to Gaza, touring a controversial aid site. This comes as Israel faces intense pressure over the growing hunger crisis. Susan Ormiston is in Jerusalem, and a warning: some of the images in her report are distressing.
A 13-year-old boy killed trying to get food. Rayyan Al-Fakwi died near the Shakush Aid Distribution Center in Gaza, according to his uncle Saman. He told his mom he wanted breakfast and there was no breakfast. He went to get aid, some flour. The uncle told us the boy got caught up in shooting at the aid center. 2 people with one shot. The bullet went right through one guy's head and ended in the other's chest, in Ryan's chest. This was the same destination for the U.S.'s Middle East envoy Steve Witkoff, traveling in a heavily armored convoy, dispatched to Gaza to report back on conditions, to shore up optics that Donald Trump is doing something to improve humanitarian aid from a controversial system backed by Israel and the U.S. Unconvincing for Palestinians like Abdullah Asfour, injured at Shakush. As soon as Witkoff came to the area, he said there was random shooting. Also planes and helicopters. At the very least, some Palestinians were able to get meager foodstuffs. But the worsening food crisis and images of emaciated children has ricocheted across the world, building immense pressure on Israel. Witkoff met Thursday with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu in an attempt to get more aid in and ceasefire talks back on track. There are signs of a shift, with one of the largest airlifts of food dropped from the sky on Friday, but it's still rare and dangerous to get to it. And Friday evening, Hamas picked up on the starvation messaging, releasing an alleged new video showing hostage Aviatar David, showing his thin frame, warning they eat what we eat. CBC News can't independently verify when the video was recorded. Hamas says it won't return to negotiations until aid flows freely. Israel denies it is starving any Palestinians, saying the aid centers are working, but clearly hunger has become a volatile pressure point in this conflict. Susan Ormiston, CBC News, Jerusalem.
Kyiv marked an official day of mourning today after a Russian drone and missile attack killed 31 people on Thursday. 5 children died in the attack. More than 150 people were injured. The Russian barrage demolished a part of a residential building. Schools, medical facilities, and universities were also damaged. It was the deadliest strike on Kyiv since July of last year. Another of Canada's famous Dionne quintuplets has died. A family spokesperson confirmed Cecile Dionne passed away earlier this week after a long illness. Born in 1934 in a small Ontario log house, the sisters, the first known quintuplets to survive infancy, gained global attention. After years spent on public display, the Ontario government apologized and awarded compensation to 3 of the surviving sisters in 1998. Cecile was 91. While Canadians celebrate Summer McIntosh's golden performances, there's concern tonight over the country's aging aquatic facilities.
We just have a facility crisis that isn't sustainable to maintain the numbers that we're seeing.
Why the next generation might not have a pool to train in. Next. Plus, rooted in a financial crisis nearly 20 years ago, a wave of escapist pop music is making a comeback.
We are feeling collectively this feeling of anxiety, and we're wanting to ingest music that kind of counteracts those feelings.
What's driving the return of recession pop? And later, an amateur drummer from the East Coast gets the opportunity of a lifetime.
Hearing the crowd chant my name was, wow, wow.
A killer moment is our moment. We're back in 2. The Canada Games torch has reached its final destination. The relay, which began in June in Ottawa, wrapped up in St. John's today. Newfoundland and Labrador will welcome over 4,000 athletes from August 8th to the 25th. The Games are considered the top competition for amateur athletes in Canada. As Summer McIntosh dominates the pool at the World Aquatics Championships, her success is inspiring young swimmers everywhere. But as Lindsay Duncombe explains, aging pools in Canada could mean they might not have a place to train.
McIntosh takes another gold medal for Canada. She is Canada's queen of the pool, inspiring young swimmers across the country. But as Summer McIntosh racks up world records, there's concern the next generation of athletes won't have a place to swim.
We just have a facility crisis that isn't sustainable to maintain the numbers that we're seeing.
Take the Vancouver Aquatic Centre. Like many pools across Canada, it was built in the 70s and needs to be replaced. The city's Parks Board plans to replace the 50-meter pool with the 25-meter one. Both Ginny Lowe's daughters swam here with the Dolphin Swim Club.
But in a 25-meter pool, that's much more compacted, and it's likened to trying to swim in a sardine can. So you just do not get the training lengths that you would.
People lined up to protest the plan, but in the end, the city says it just doesn't have the cash or the space to build a bigger pool.
There's a reason why private-owned gyms don't have pools. It's because they lose money.
This former park commissioner explains pools with hot tubs and gyms attract more users and user fees than long lanes do.
The park board is struggling with trying to make sure they get the biggest amount of use out of that space.
It's a concern across the country. Swimming Canada says 3 universities, Acadia, Victoria, and Laurentian, have all closed their pools, and Toronto schools are considering cutting pools to save costs. Fewer pools can mean longer waits for lessons and fewer swimmers.
There's no more recreational swimming. There's no more therapy swimming. There's no more senior drop-in programs, no more life-saving programs.
Swimming officials say investing in pools is about much more than heroes and gold medals, and they hope McIntosh's success reminds Canadians of that. Lindsay Duncombe, CBC News, Vancouver.
A wave of upbeat and energetic music born out of the 2008 financial crisis is making a comeback.
The lyrics are primarily focused on escapism, euphoria.
What's behind the resurgence of recession pop? Next. Plus, on the heels of Donald Trump's latest trade war escalation, we break down whether Canada's strategy is working.
Every step we take to make trade between Canada and the United States even a little harder is really hard to undo.
The View from Ottawa and Washington. And grappling with growing rates of domestic violence, some Maritimers are joining forces to create change.
We talk about how to do better, to work on your behavior, your attitudes.
Some heartfelt barbershop talk when The National breaks down the stories shaping your world. Next. A wave of music that was popular during the 2008 recession is making a comeback. Experts say people are craving songs that reduce feelings of anxiety and despair due to the economy. Makta Gabriselassie now on the resurgence of recession pop.
Turning back the clock, tunes that thrived during tough economic times are once again popular with the help of social media and streaming services.
Recession pop
is making a comeback.
The subgenre covers music that came out around the Great Recession of 2008-2009. A time that gave way to party anthems from Lady Gaga, Kesha, the Black Eyed Peas, and more.
The lyrics are primarily focused on escapism, euphoria, going out to the club.
In the last year, Spotify says it's seen a 6% increase in the streams of recession pop in Canada and a 36% growth since 2022. Luminate, which tracks music data in the U.S., saw a spike too. For example, listing Miley Cyrus's Party in the USA among the top recession pop songs with 87 million plays this year. What's driving this interest? Experts point to the last few years, from the COVID-19 pandemic to the current trade war with the U.S.
We are feeling collectively this feeling of anxiety, and we're wanting to ingest music that kind of counteracts those feelings.
Out with new music, Kesha is playing up the recession pop talk too.
Nobody can afford eggs, so at least we should party.
And history shows pairing upbeat popular music with tough times is nothing new.
You have this huge swing band popularity during World War II, and that was all this vivacious dance music going on. So pop music has always offered that.
But this music publisher points to other forces at play.
Generally, if it was a hit, there's almost always a bump in its consumption and revenue 15 to 20 years later.
I ain't got no money. No matter the reason, social media and streamers are giving old music new life. Magda Gebrselassie, CBC News, Toronto.
Now let's break down the news shaping our world. Intimate partner violence in Nova Scotia is an epidemic. Among those most at risk, Black women. To disrupt it, a group of Black men are breaking their silence.
They come in, they feel like they can escape problems, negativity, things like that.
And we're joining that open conversation about fostering change. But first.
So there is no rationality.
Anger and confusion after Trump hits more than 90 countries with more steep tariffs, including Canada. We look at the ramifications and if Ottawa should rethink its trade strategy in ongoing trade talks with Washington. To help us navigate what this new wave of U.S. tariffs mean for Canada and break down their likely impact, our former CBC Parliamentary Bureau Chief and The Economist's Canada correspondent, Rob Russo, and Peter Armstrong, CBC News Senior Business Correspondent. Thanks for joining us.
Hello,
How are you both?
Okay, Peter, let's start with you. This latest tariff increase of non-CUSMA related goods is not in and of itself, right, going to have a big impact on the economy. 95% of goods still travel across the border tariff-free under the NAFTA deal. So what is the significance then of Trump's latest executive order on tariffs?
To me, at least, there are a couple of important things. One is for those producers of products that are facing that higher tariff now, this is yet more pain. And yes, 95% of products going across aren't going to face it, but a lot of companies make a lot of stuff that still does go across, and it's a headache, and it's extra cost, and it's more uncertainty. But that's the bigger thing, is the uncertainty here is enormous. And this is a deepening of the crisis. Every step we take to make trade between Canada and the United States even a little harder is really hard to undo. That is a bell that cannot be unrung.
Rob, I suppose this could have been worse for Canada. What is your take, though? Is this a success or a failure for Prime Minister Carney?
No way can this be called a success. Look, the tariff at 35% on Canada is, I think, the third highest that he's applied around the globe. Brazil's number one at 50. I think Syria's at 41. And we're number 3 in terms of the punitive nature of the tariff. The president's not taking the prime minister's calls. There are no formal discussions scheduled for the next little while. I assume they're going to be talking over the phone, but people have come back from Washington.
To your point about other countries, Peter, Mexico's Prime Minister Claudia Sheinbaum was able to secure a 90-day reprieve and a tariff increase. Canada wasn't able to do that. Mexico didn't impose retaliatory tariffs. Canada did. Is it too early to tell which tactic works best when negotiating with someone like Trump?
I think it is, because it's a study in contrast. What the Mexican government and their trade team have decided, the approach they took is fundamentally, it's like the polar opposite, the flip side of the same coin from what Canada has done. And the problem is we're still in the midst of this. I looked through all of these deals that were agreed to leading up to the imposition of tariffs on Thursday night. I don't see anything in the South Korea deal or the Japan deal or even the Mexican deal that I sort of banged my fist on the table and said, boy, I sure wish the Canadian team had landed that.
Right. Rob, the Carney government has increased spending on border security, in an effort to appease the Trump administration over the fentanyl issue. They also axed the digital services tax. What else can Carney do at this point?
Not a lot in terms of appeasement, because I think they've gone as far as they can go. If I listen to Minister LeBlanc, as I did on Radio Canada this afternoon, he seemed to suggest that the Americans were looking for us to take down the $30 billion counter tariffs that we imposed earlier this year. Howard Lutnick, the Commerce Secretary in Washington, made a point of saying that Canada was only one of 2 countries that imposed counter tariffs, that retaliated in effect. I get the impression that the Americans would like to see those come down. I don't know how you do that, given that Mr. Carney did pull back the digital sales tax and got absolutely nothing for it. One thing he could do, if I listen to Americans here and some of those in Washington, one thing he could do is talk to Mr. Trump more often. They're never going to be bosom buddies. They are completely different animals. You couldn't get more cat and dog in a way. But that being said, some Americans are urging Mr. Carney to develop more of a relationship with Mr. Trump, some kind of relationship that is apart from the tussle over trade. It's a tough one, but I've covered lots of prime ministers, and I know that when you have a better relationship at the summit level, a lot of the problems underneath can get cleared away in a hurry. That's a difficult one for Mark Carney, but he is being urged to call more often, and call not necessarily on trade. The whole Palestinian issue is one thing that was brought to the fore. Could he have called up the White House ahead of time and said, we're going to do this, and then maybe use it as an excuse to get into trade? Perhaps.
That's an interesting take. I want to talk a little bit before we go about optics and perception. You're down in Washington, Peter. A trade war is usually not good for any country. Do you get any sense that the Canada-U.S. trade conflict is on the minds of Americans? And what's the coverage been like stateside?
This trip has been the first time that my explanation to people, whether it's a dinner party or an interview or just talking to friends, people seem to understand not only that Canadians are upset, but that they are taking actions that are posing some problems for the American economy, whether that's in tourism. The liquor issue has come up several times in this trip, where people seem to recognize that there's been a break in the way that we think about the United States, and that impact might actually be something material that would be hard to change. And I think the notion that is even in the conversation was interesting to me. But again, the thing that I think stood out was what I talked to you at the beginning of the show about. The jobs numbers that came in have shown a bit of a crack in the economic foundation in this country. That's getting a lot of play. People wondering if this notion that the American economy was thriving in spite of tariffs might not have been an aversion of that they didn't avert the trouble, they merely delayed it, and that trouble is now right at their door.
Look, I appreciate your insight. Thank you both.
You bet.
Pleasure, Ash.
Still ahead, a group of black men on the East Coast are talking about ways to prevent intimate partner violence.
The Barbershop is, in hindsight, it's a group counseling session for men.
After hours Barbershop talk with the goal of bringing real change. That's next. Intimate partner violence has been declared an epidemic in some parts of Canada, including Nova Scotia, and rates are higher among the Black community. Now, a brotherhood determined to do something about it gathers for community and conversation.
I use my past traumas as identifiers for what I don't want to become.
Speaking up to help end the cycle and cultivate a better future. Elizabeth Chu sat in on the group's final meeting and spoke with some of those trying to bring about change. A warning, some may find this story distressing.
It's closing time at Fine Line's Barbershop near Halifax, but the place is packed. Some of the folks here are related, some are acquaintances, some are complete strangers. They're sharing a meal and their thoughts, but this isn't your usual barbershop talk.
So before we start, gentlemen, we have Elizabeth and Kiki here. They're going to be filming us. This is going to be our last session for trying to get a push so that we can continue on doing workshops.
This meeting is about tackling the issue of intimate partner violence in the Black and African Nova Scotian community.
What is your understanding of domestic violence? What is it?
Mario Roll, a social worker, brought the group together.
We wanted to do something different and we wanted to help community. And so what we wanted to do is we wanted to provide a holistic counseling, right? So the barbershop is, in hindsight, it's a group counseling session for men.
Roll is part of Winds of Change, an organization that provides support to people from marginalized communities around the social factors that affect health.
We're talking about mentorship. We're talking about brotherly love. That's the first thing, mentorship and brotherly love. And we talk about how to do better to work on your behavior, your attitudes, your emotions. All right? And basically to help foster a positive, healthy community.
He's teamed up with another social worker.
I just want to take the time seriously and thank each and every guy for showing up week after week. This work and this space, that we're creating is a safe space for us as Black men to discuss things that are important to us.
There's also a church pastor.
We are all here tonight for one reason, and that is let's see what we can do. Let's stand together and say, brother, I got your back.
Also shaping the conversation, a barber.
For people to come to the barbershop, I feel like it's a sense of relief. They come in, they feel like they can escape problems, negativity, things like that, and I feel like it's a great place for them to share their thoughts and how they feel. A lot of the times you look to go to a therapist, I could be your therapist.
Led by the trained therapists, Roll starts the session.
Growing up as a young Black boy, I would, I do something wrong, I get beaten, I start crying. The first thing my mom gonna say is, shut up before I give you something to cry, right? And so a lot of time for me, I only can speak for myself, I mask my emotions.
He says discussions like this are needed because, for the most part, the voices of men have been left out.
Anyone else?
The floor is open. Stories are shared about how daily stress can accumulate on top of their reality as Black men.
A young fella can go through a lot, but sometimes we like to hide like I said earlier, I like to hide my emotions sometimes, right? But it all comes up and bursts later, right? So, you gotta talk as much as you can and try to anyway, even though it's hard, right?
Because you're not free to speak at work. Exactly. So you take it driving home, your partner asks you a question, you're still loaded with that emotion from work. You don't even have time to decompress. You just, lash out on her.
What would you do?
They talk about staying calm.
For what you know now, what would you do?
It all starts with understanding that you cannot control what happens to you. You can only control yourself.
Social work student Cordero Stirrup is part of the team. Growing up in the Bahamas, he witnessed his parents arguing.
I'm a man that grew up in an environment where, how would I put it, trauma was natural and normal. And I had to educate myself on what it is to become a better man. And I use my past traumas as, how would I put this, identifiers for what I don't want to become. So it's good to emphasize like these traumas and help young men understand there's always a way out. And it's good to see success stories and people like myself and others.
The goal here is to create more success stories by building bonds among the participants.
Let's choose to love. As black men, you know, we bought into this system and we've been killing each other. So at what point do we change that narrative and look at each other and say, hey, bro, I love you, man. Hey, brother, I love you, man. And there's no shame in that. There's no, as a matter of fact, we become empowered in that. Our sisters, hey, they're queens. And kings don't marry peasants. So we need to get into the mindset that our sisters, our black women, are queens. And as kings, we should do that. So we're changing how we think. And when we change how we think as men, we change how we speak. When we change how we speak, we change how we act. And I'll tell you, that's powerful when we get together, because then we change our communities.
Everything I do for my daughter. And I've seen a lot of young people, falling through the cracks. And in my mind, I'm thinking, one day my daughter may marry one of these guys. And do she have to go through a domestic violence incident in order for someone to actually hear? So for me, I'm a person that I will act before something happens.
This conversation is about breaking the cycle.
Most of us have children, right? If we don't get it now, then it's going to be passed down to our children. The question that I have is, what are we doing to stop that?
After listening and sharing,
and that's a wrap.
The session comes to an end. The microphone is passed around.
Honestly, it's good every time I come here, and it's kind of it's always around something that's for the betterment of us. So it's like therapy to me when I come out here, because it's like, I don't know, it's like sometimes when you hear your thoughts coming from someone else's mouth, it's a different type of thing, and you take it a different type of way. Instead of beating yourself up about stuff, you learn how to deal with stuff. And sometimes it's just, I don't know, it makes me realize how much that I do have to offer, even in these spaces.
Just want to respect that everyone got a spot to talk to, everyone got a spot to, feel good about themselves, and I know I feel good about myself every time I leave this place, so.
I appreciate each and every one of you for coming out week after week. I know, I just appreciate your commitment, right? In being a better version of yourself, and breaking down stereotypes of who we are and what society thinks of us. And then also taking this information and having that ripple effect on the people around us is helping us be better every day. So I appreciate you all. Oh, thank you. I appreciate you.
Like an interviewer.
And since those first sessions happened, the organizers of the Barbershop Talks have received new funding to take the conversations on the road. This fall, they'll be holding sessions outside the city to reach into smaller African Nova Scotian communities around the province. They have received government funding through the Nova Scotia Advisory Council on the Status of Women. That's money that's aimed at helping to end domestic and intimate partner violence. Asha?
And I understand there's been a lot of reaction to this story since it first aired.
Absolutely. There are folks across the country who are asking for a barbershop talk to happen in their community. They're talking about how safe spaces are much needed where they live, places where Black men can be vulnerable and share their thoughts openly. Because when we're talking about violence prevention, part of what we're talking about is mental health. Asha?
Thanks, Elizabeth. Elizabeth Chu in Halifax tonight. If you or anyone you know is in crisis, help is available. You can find resources and more information at cbc.ca/stopping domestic violence. Coming up, a local drummer rocks out with his favorite band. You're looking at the rock band The Killers on stage at a music festival in St. John's. Behind the drum kit, a local guy plucked from the audience. Stephen Brown got to join the band on stage, keeping the beat for their encore song. Tonight, his killer performance is our moment.
We were on the front rail. My amazing partner made a sign for me. I heard the first couple notes of the song I'd been practicing for reasons unknown, and my entire body just kind of stiffened. Brandon pointed at me and asked us, the crowd, if should we let him up, and they all cheered. everything. So then I ran up on stage.
Should we let him out?
It was pretty wild. Standing on the stage, everything left my brain. I've never actually played on an acoustic kit. I only have an electric. I'd also never played with a band. I've never played in front of anybody except the people that were in the room when we were jamming. So this, I went from kind of like almost 0 to like 1 million. Go big or go home, life is short. I don't know if I would have felt as comfortable doing it in a different city, but it was home. Hearing the crowd chant my name was, wow, wow. It was a top moment of life for sure, to not just see the show, but to actually be part of the show.
So Steven started practicing that killer song for an hour a day for about 2 weeks leading up to the concert. You know what they say, practice makes perfect. From all of us here at The National, thank you for being with us. I'm Asha Tomlinson. Take care.